to actually make your first comic. When I first started my comic, I thought I could just completely skip the planning process. It was a disaster. After 2 failed comics, I finally feel confident with the one I've been working on for a year. But you don't have to learn the hard way. Here are the steps you should take to come out with your best comic. Step 1. Develop the plot. The beginning should set the story up. Introduce the characters and the setting. Ask yourself, do these characters add value to your story? Do they develop the characters in any way? Also, try not to reveal too much about your story, or else nothing will be left to the imagination. The inciting incident, a dramatic event that sets your main character on a journey. The middle, the journey or adventure your character is in. The middle can consist of obstacles, twists. The middle doesn't need to be in a specific order. The ending. How do you want to conclude your story? Depending on your story, it could be a bittersweet ending, it could be happy ever after, or it can just be totally bitter and just sad. Do you want to torture your reader? That's up to you. My comic goes from beginning, inciting incident, obstacle 1, obstacle 2, big twist, obstacle 3, and ending. I gave myself a lot of work. Step 2, create your characters. Who is your main character? What are their goals, flaws, interests? Knowing your character's flaws from the beginning can help you develop them throughout the story. You don't want your characters to be perfect in the beginning. You don't want your characters to become Mary Sue's and whatever the male version of that is. People love to see characters develop throughout the story. They love to see them have flaws because people can relate to them. And then with looks. What are your characters wearing? When you start drawing the comic, make sure you set up a spreadsheet of every color that your character is gonna need, so that they don't all of a sudden just have a green shirt when they were wearing purple before. Make sure that if you're working on this alone, that you keep the outfits simple. My characters might be way too simple. Don't come to me asking for advice on character design, because I do not know the first thing about that. Also, for your character's backstory, figure out how that shaped who they are today. Step 3. World building. Where does the story take place? The real world, fantasy world, sci-fi. Figure out if you're going to draw your backgrounds or use 3D models. Step 4. Once you've brainstormed everything, you can write the script or story. Personally, I almost wrote my whole comic into an actual book instead of a script. This process is mandatory whether it's going to be a script or a book, because if you don't know where your story is going to go, you're just going to be jumbling everything around. You won't even know where you're going. That's exactly why I canceled both of my first 2 comics. My first comic didn't even have a villain. Step 5, create it. Make sure that if you're adding any stylistic choices to your comic, that it continues throughout the story. If you're going to hand draw your speech bubbles, make sure that continues throughout the story. Don't worry about your art being perfect at first, because your art will get better throughout the story. But if you're really struggling and just starting out in art, I do suggest that you practice before you start, specifically with anatomy or gesture. This video doesn't go in depth with making a comic, but I have made one in the past using Qᴜᴜ Paint, and one specifically for a webtoon that I used IBIS PAINT X with. Those videos will be in the description. How many pages should you have? If you plan to tell a really long story or movie length story, what I'm choosing to do is 150 pages per book. So it's going to be multiple volumes. If you're going to cram your whole comic into one book, it's going to cost too much money to buy it. Step 6, review and edit. Check if there are any spelling errors, inconsistencies. Step 7, create the cover art. Here's an idea. You can make each volume's cover art be the same. Not fully the same, but different variations. I got this idea from another YouTuber, but I don't know. I think she deleted her channel. I cannot find that video for the life of me. I suggest that the cover art is actually better quality than the actual comic, because you're supposed to simplify your style, so feel free to go all out with the cover art. Step 8, publish. I plan to use Amazon KDP. I believe to publish it on there doesn't cost a dime. If you'd like to get early access to my comic, I do have a Patreon in the description. If this video helped you, I'm sure these ones will too.